Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to take a look at Underwater, which came out in 2020, directed by William Eubank. So this film actually finished production back in 2017, and it took 3+ years to actually get the film released. And that was because this was the last film by 20th Century Studios, because Disney purchased them, as we all know, and this film, along with a couple of other things, went under ownership of Disney, and they kind of sat on it for a while. I guess you could argue that there was similar films being released throughout the years. You had Life, which was an alien sci-fi and space movie. You also then had Ridley Scott returning with Alien Covenant. And so you can understand them maybe wanting to distance this film from those. But this film kind of got released at the beginning of the pandemic almost. It didn't do very well in cinemas and was eventually released, to streaming networks, where it's been pretty much bashed by every critic out there.
Yeah, nobody's been blindly loving of it.
I was immediately attracted to it because it was a big multi-million-dollar, I think it was a $50 million budget on a creature feature movie, which immediately gets my attention. The director, William Eubank, I saw his previous film, The Signal, which came out in 2014, and he proved in that film that he could do quite a lot with very, very little. And so I was very curious to see what he could do given a lot.
Yes.
And unfortunately, he did very little in some regards, because this film is a very mixed bag. I would say straight off the bat that the performances are all very good, because another one of those things that put me off immediately wanting to watch the film was the lead actress, Kristen Stewart.
Yeah, she's. I think she's been typecast in our memories in her earlier roles, and that would obviously be sparkly vampires. And it doesn't really fit the genre that perhaps we both appreciate as sparkly vampires.
It's not made for us, is it?
No, it's not aimed at us. We are men in our mid-30s. I think when it came out, we were probably men in our early 30s, maybe late 20s. Because it
still wasn't made for me then either.
No, I was going to say, it's never been aimed at us. Twilight was not really for us. She's done some other good stuff since. I believe she's had a lot of very critical indie films.
I think she's been critically well received, but the films that she's appeared in haven't been financially very good.
Well, yeah, this one I think she got no particular criticism or such. The one before it, where was it before it? Charlie's Angels?
Yeah.
I think people said she was good in it. I've never seen it, I don't know. But the film itself bombed also. So her last two films, this and that were her last two films, and neither have done particularly well, unfortunately for her. But I'm sure she got paid loads of money, so sure she'll cope.
Well, let's have a look at the synopsis for Underwater. The story follows Nora, who's an engineer and a member of the Tian Corporation, and she is part of a crew mining deep underground in the Mariana Trench when an earthquake rocks the station, and then it's a fight for survival as the remaining crew members try desperately to reach the surface when they realize that there might be something hunting them deep underwater.
It's pretty good open.
I agree with you. I think it's a very good opening, but I also believe that it's also the weakest part of the film. I'm not quite sure where I sit on it, because traditionally, with a horror film, or with any film, before, the catalyst happens, the thing that sets the film in motion happens, you get to breathe with the characters, you get to know them, you get to understand them, you get to know exactly what type of person they are. And this film has an opening narration from Nora,
while you see secret news reports sort of flash by mentioning the TN Corporation, give you some foreshadowing. I like that.
I think the title crawl intro is fantastic,
and the close,
and the closing titles. Yeah. Yes,
but yeah,
you get flashes of information. It's very quick, kind of quick cut edits.
You may want to pause it while streaming or however you watch this.
Yeah, and just to absorb all that information, because it is a massive dump of information.
It's subtle, and there's lots of kind of Easter eggs almost hidden amongst them. I mean, it's not referencing like Marvel movies or mythos in general from like Cthulhu-esque, but it's got lots of kind of hidden little gems where you're like, oh okay, I see.
It's alluding to something
evil
else.
Corporation being evil.
Yeah. It's like, there's been problems and weird disturbing reports. carry on. Business
Yeah.
is normal.
Yeah, no, nothing strange happening here.
But yeah, it's Nora's kind of opening dialogue or inner monologue. And, like 20 minutes into the film, I was like, what did she say? What was she talking about? Did it bear any relevance on what's happening? Did it, was it insightful into her character? It was none of those things. It was almost like I felt like it was something that the studio had tacked on afterwards. It was like, it's too quiet at the beginning. You got to have her say something.
When you're underwater for months at a time, you lose all sense of day and night. And there's only awake and dreaming.
She's a bit shell-shocked almost from the very beginning before the action starts.
Right.
And jaded by a life clearly that's worn her down. And she's working on this kind of deep mining rig. It's all very strange. Strange in a writing sense because there's no real arc or development for her character. Because that's the biggest issue. Her arc, what is it?
She doesn't have one.
No,
I don't
she's
believe
always
she does.
pretty good
Yeah.
and reliable at her job because she's a good engineer. There's a couple of characters who are engineers in this. The other one has a knack for most of the movie, but she does that all very well. She's brave generally.
Well, yeah, I mean, the film really opens, just moments into it with a massive explosion as the space station, as the underwater station is rocked by this earthquake, and you see all the walls exploding and water bursting in and bulkheads slamming down.
That opening action
you are
sequence,
thrown straight into the action without knowing who this person really is. By the time those bulkheads first explode, you've already forgotten what she just said because something incredibly exciting and horrible is happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, you do get, flashes of who these people are by their reactions to the situations around them. When she gets to that terminal, she's found this other character, and then there's a couple of other crewmates running down this long corridor, and she's hacked the terminal and she has the decision to close the bulkhead door or to wait for them to make it.
And she obviously leaves it to the last second. It doesn't leave you much question because water sprays through.
Well, she only did it because the other character was yelling at her to close the door, and so I was like, okay, so I get an idea of who he is and who she is just from those little moments.
But the door already just shuts in time. And you're like, okay, so it wasn't in a I never felt that was just a judgment on either of them though.
No,
because it was quite a rational decision to go, look, we're out of time. They're not going to make it. And you kind of saw them being torn apart as the walls kind of detonated out the corridor. And that was all very cool. But again, this is from the first moment where I start to pick at the kind of fringes, the frills of this story and go, wait, so these compartments don't seal automatically? Or
I think they did, but they're malfunctioned now.
Well, they consistently malfunction with the whole film then, because very few places seem to be built to stand as a separate just bubble in the apocalypse.
I can only imagine that the catastrophic thing that caused all the destruction was so huge that it's had a ripple effect and it's knocking out systems everywhere.
I know it has to happen for the movie to push forward, but it doesn't feel like they explain that.
No, but that's because you didn't really get to explore the station with the characters before it happened, so you don't really know
They're
how
not saying
works
how that this is worn out, because it looks a bit run down.
Yeah.
So that would have been fine, but I think there's limits to health and safety that corporations can. I mean, it is the evil corporation gag, but they don't really make the corporation a villain outside of, as we said, the beginning and the end. And that's through written words you kind of see. And obviously, you get a bit of a speaker kind of come up, and the TN Corporation appreciates your work. We love you. Die for us gloriously.
I didn't hear that part.
No, well, I think it may have been
subliminally in the speakers.
We want you to know that you're not just part of it. You're part of our family.
Because it reminds me of Dead Space and other games like that.
Well, it's funny that you should mention Dead Space because there's a small Easter egg in the film for you, is that one of those survivors running down the corridor is the voice actor for Isaac Clarke from Dead Space. It's Gunnar Wright.
He's also the voice on the recording they hear when they finally get to the command room and meet with the captain, which is a little bit after this. Not much after this. It's a couple of exploding hallways later.
It's a great kind of setup for and foreshadowing for what's to come, and just hearing that final distress call from the miners. That was very, very effective and very well done, and a great voice actor.
Yeah, the whole film, as I said, they've got a big budget. They seem to have known what they were doing with the setup and the aesthetics of the station and the evil corporation. It just works.
Yeah.
But it does feel like it's all underused.
Yes.
And that's the biggest issue. I think this film is better than a lot of films we've talked about in many, many ways.
But it's also worse than those
Yes,
in many
because
others.
it feels like it's not reaching its full potential.
Absolutely.
While those others were reaching the best they could with the actors, the budget, and time constraints and various other pressures placed upon the team making those films.
I think they really execute the beginning of this film incredibly well with the kind of survival horror aspect. Like, the first time I watched this film, when that explosion happened, I kind of immediately switched my brain off and went, oh, it's one of those films that's literally going to play out like a video game without any gameplay.
No.
It's just all the cut sequences. But they did do that very well. Like, the claustrophobic, horrific moments when they're crawling through all of the debris and crushed corridors, and they're moving past corpses of colleagues and friends.
Well, it was all concrete. Because I just thought if it's solid concrete and somehow that's pressurized, how? Okay, they breached it, but that's what I didn't get.
The structural integrity, I don't know how it would fall apart.
Very confused me.
But it looked good. It was very impressive, and I kind of felt for the characters when they were crawling through that dark corridor past the bodies. So I was like, that was very effective.
Yeah, you don't want to pick at this film too much, because that's the issue I think we're going to have now. Because the more I think about sequences that were cool, I feel like they're out of place so much. This film should have been so this is where I'm in two minds, because I think I like the horror Cthulhu-esque road it goes.
Yeah.
But I feel this is almost a disaster film.
Yes, it is an action disaster film.
It could have been cleaner if it had just been an action disaster film.
Yeah.
But
it wants to be a creature feature.
It wants to be a creature feature, and maybe that sells better.
I think that's probably part of the problem with the setup of this film, is that it's, like when you watch Alien, well, you know it's about an alien creature, a monster, you know? With this film, it's in the poster artwork, you've seen the teeth, it was in the trailers, you knew this was going to be a monster movie, so, working under the guise of it being a disaster film first and then a monster film second, it kind of works, but at the same time, in the back of your mind, you're like, you've heard that creature from the broadcast, there's something else out there, but what, you don't know, and that kind of mystery, it slowly unravels throughout the film, because the film has no story.
No.
It's about a bunch of characters that all work together to survive the scenario that they're in. And so with the rest of the cast, we do have Vincent Cassell, who plays Captain Lucien. He's a fantastic actor, always memorable in all of his performances, and he really excels. He's the standout star, I would say, of this film.
Yeah, he carries the gravel and the gravitas. He certainly... It's those sort of actors who can emote really well. Although I think Stewart does well in her own way in this, but I think he slightly overshadows her. But she is very good nonetheless. I think both of them, when they're on screen together, sort of really have an echo of a father-daughter relationship. Maybe
I'd
that's
see
the
that.
reference. I think you kind of where she knows his daughter's age, where he wouldn't, and there's an awkward moment there because she clearly is intimately friends with him.
How old is she?
14.
She's not 14. Allie? She's gotta be like my age, right?
I said 14. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't know why I said it.
But yeah, I do agree. I think he is one of the best. He has the best chemistry with the main lead, and he has the most character development.
Yeah, of all of them. Yeah.
The rest of them,
they're pretty disposable.
Yeah, they kind of like you have the Asian actress Jessica Henwick. She actually is asking them questions a little bit after the kind of meet up in the control room, and none of them will answer, which is almost an attempt at character development, and it's like it stalls. And I'm like, okay, you've tried to develop your characters in some subconscious part, and then you don't, because I think in the end she's like, talking about her dog and other things, and maybe she gets again. It's not really proper character development. I don't feel like you're getting to know them and appreciating them.
It's just small talk.
Yeah,
it's kind of. I mean, I can understand certain characters making small talk as a way to block out the horrors that's happening around them.
Well, I think both our favourite would probably be T.J. Miller's character.
Yes, T.J. Miller was one of the. I mean, he was the voice of the audience throughout the film. Like when something shitty was happening, like his response would be your response in that situation. He's the the everyday man, and he has a fluffy rabbit that he keeps with him throughout the whole film. Now, originally, it was going to be a live rabbit. But, I think when they were, several days, weeks into production, they were just like, look, this is not feasible. Doesn't make sense for him to have an actual rabbit. I was like, maybe it's a callback to The Abyss where, he keeps a rat.
Well, yeah, the suits look awesome, but I can't see
yes.
how you'd hide a rabbit in there. And again, this corporation's already running a ropey operation. I mean, having pets down there would just be pushing your luck. Although Alien did. The Aliens franchise.
They had a cat.
They had a cat for most of that. Yeah, no, so, I mean, hey, what you sneak onto your ships is a matter for your own choices. But, yeah, the soft toy is a nice gag.
Yeah.
And again...
It elevates his character that little bit more. It makes him a little bit more memorable when you realise that he's protecting this stuffed rabbit.
And he eventually passes it over to Emily and threatens to haunt her if she doesn't get it to the surface.
See, when he did that, I was just like, oh, okay. So it's like whoever holds the rabbit is kind of got a get out of jail free card. Like, you're going to make it because they ain't going to kill a rabbit. Not even a stuffed one.
No. And I liked it. Alas, he doesn't make it through enough of the film.
No.
But we'll get to that eventually. Yeah. He is our favourite, though, and I think this is the problem. When you have the everyman character, you might want to last it a bit longer.
Sure.
Take this bunny. I bequeath it to you. If he doesn't make it, I'll haunt you.
Let's go, guys.
And we also have John Gallagher Jr., who plays Liam Smith, who at one point in the film suffers from extreme oxygen deprivation, kind of passes out and remains out of it pretty much for most of the film. But with the few scenes we have at the beginning, we can see that he has this warm embrace with Nora. You can see that he's very good friends with Emily. I think there might even be a relationship going on there.
Yes, I think so. And then she carries...
And then they literally carry him through most of
the
the film. But he was another great kind of character who bonded quite well with T.J. Miller's character.
It was, and they were being laddish in the kind of sequence where they first go out for a kind of ocean walk.
Yes, yeah.
Those two are being laddish and immediately pick up weapons to fight with because they're being boys in their own kind of fun, and you kind of know it's going to go badly in a sense because
he brought a nice camaraderie to the team.
Yes, and I the opening is, I think they, as you said, there wasn't enough setup with that team.
No,
I feel like you needed a better pacing.
Like Laura didn't even really know. I think it's Rodrigo. Who was played by Mamadou Athie, and
good. I like the guy. Yeah.
He was good, but it was like there's one moment where she turns to him, and she's like, "Oh, you're Rodrigo, aren't you?" And it's like, so some of these characters don't even know each other. They've been working down there for months and months.
Yeah, a few hundred people work on this station. Some do night shift, some do day shift. I think he comments on that.
Yeah.
So they can pass like ships in the night. So you kind of end up with these half-realised character connections, and it's a big one for those two because you get the insinuation that he finds all the helmets, and it looks like he gave everybody a good helmet but himself, which is somewhat selfless. And you're kind of like, well, why? I mean, you don't get enough character connection with these guys to kind of see why he'd be so selfless. You're not sure he does it, and there is a moment when you go back over that sequence, you're like, okay, they're foreshadowing this a little bit. So he kind of has a noble sort of subtlety to his character, but you're not sure. And then he dies.
I don't know what's going on with this thing.
Well, keep trying.
Where do we go?
Guys, what's going on?
It's not long into the film when all the characters have gotten together and they make their escape plan.
Yeah.
And their escape plan is to go deeper to the very bottom of the Mariana Trench and go for an ocean walk.
Yeah, they're going to walk across and down a bit to get to the drill so they can go back up.
Yes, to a station that isn't malfunctioning like the one that they're in. And it's at that moment where they can hear the station exploding above them.
Your question is, where's everybody else? And this is another thing. This is where I just like, okay, now there's not even bodies inside this fully functioning base.
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone who's died, you wouldn't see them because the bulkheads had closed. They were in destroyed parts of the station.
Yeah, but I don't know. It just felt odd they didn't find another survivor or something, or somebody to foreshadow the horror, because you kind of don't see the creatures till maybe halfway through.
Yeah.
Properly. I think that's, you hear, as we said, the voice thing, and there's a little bit of other foreshadowing, but
It introduces the monster fairly well, I would
Yes.
say. But first, I do just want to go back to Rodrigo's death, because that was an incredibly well done sequence.
yes.
And also, I just want to give massive praise to the set design. It's not a green screen. It was real built sets, real built,
Yeah, it was
suits that
really
they're in.
cool.
And the suits looked bulky, industrial. They looked authentic, like they would work.
And they were spacesuit-esque as well.
Yeah.
So principally they looked awesome, but
They look like the armor from Gears of War,
Yes,
or
it
from
was space-
StarCraft,
yeah, very-
or from Space Marines.
yeah,
It's-
it was hefty looking suits, which did make me chuckle again. Just to point this out, I know them jumping a little bit with that, but the suit references where they're looking at a crawl space and going, we're not sure we can get through there. I was like, I'm the smallest, and I look at all the suits and go, they're all about the same size.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that matters when you're in a suit that's meant to be deal with pressures of deep sea, because it wouldn't reshape to your size
No.
unless it was super technologically advanced. And then I look around, it doesn't look super technologically advanced. This looks like a disaster because nobody was super technologically advanced. Because if this base had been able to take a kind of pressure change, which you'd assume it would if it could survive at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, I'm sure it should have coped better. But the suits looked awesome.
Yes.
It's just that sequence later on when she's like, I'll go through because I'm the smallest. I'm like, only if you take the suit off.
Right.
Yeah.
It's too tight. You gotta find another way.
I'm the smallest, let me check.
And so once they've all got in their suits, you get them all loading into their suits, powering up, and then they all circle together on that platform, that elevator platform, which takes them down, submerges them underwater,
And they're in-
they're
yeah,
preparing to open the bulkhead doors underneath to the bottom of the ocean. But as the door's slowly opening, Rodrigo's visor or his screen starts to crack, and that hairline crack, moves across the visor before he implodes. And, blood and body chunks just fly out everywhere.
Cool.
Nora, in a panic, just runs right out of the platform. You get that claustrophobic close-up of inside the helmet cam. And, you hear her breathing. You're looking around at the vast blackness of the bottom of the ocean. I was like, to me, that was incredibly well done. Like, I believed like they're having a human response to seeing that, despite the immense pressure that they're under. I was like, geez, this that got my anxiety going. And I was like, that's the horror.
Yeah, that's where I did again feel that the creature feature aspect of this film is at odds with this, because the situation and the way they present their kind of suits and their visibility in these suits, in contrast to a lot of other deep sea adventure, horror / disaster films, this does it really well in the claustrophobic horror of this kind of trapped in their own little globe of and not really able to see properly what's going on around them. I think it pays a price in its cinematography sense, because it's not really giving you the visuals at a wider breadth especially when the monsters are attacking. Because, and as we say, sometimes you don't want to put your creature dead center because you want to keep it at the good horror is at the edge of your vision, not quite clear. But the problem is when nothing's clear, and I felt it was hazy because of the kind of moment you start reading. That sequence was great, but it kept doing it as the film rolled on and on and on and on. You're like, okay, this is the problem. It's a jump scare starting to pop up, and you're like, okay, this is now the issue, because the mechanic you're using clouds our ability to see your cool film.
I can't see shit. My right or his right?
So a lot of it, when they thankfully kept coming out of the water and take off their helmets and then lugging around like space marines, which I liked, and I liked those moments more somehow, because you got to see the suits properly, you got to see the actors kind of dealing with the size of the suit.
Well, I really liked all of the underwater stuff. You know, they did
I did like
the
it,
wet
but
for dry look.
That was the way they made this was really, really, really good.
Yeah, I mean the suits were very heavy, so even though they're not in water when they're moving around, it still looked effective. Like the dust and particles being kicked up from the boots, the debris floating around in the ocean, the limited visibility of their lights.
I like it, but I mean, it's a difficult film to critique because I think it has such great set and costume design, and as we said, kind of the whole faux ocean walking. All of it is really cool, but I just feel it's just not quite used right. And that's where I'm like, I agree it's cool, but I feel like there's a certain je ne sais quoi missing when it comes to kind of what you can see and what you can't see. Like when things are exploding and like they're being thrown around the ocean, it's very difficult to tell what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the horror, though. I mean, I agree that it's very difficult, but again, it is
a lot from Nora's perspective.
Yeah.
And you've got the suit. I like the way the suit does have a kind of a heads-up display a little bit, telling her oxygen level and almost giving some direction where she is, but it's not entirely clear how much she can kind of navigate. And also navigation on that suit does not make... Again, I'm not sure how they're doing it. Like they're following control markers at one point, and then midway point they get lost, and then they find their way immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, after Rodrigo's death, they do reconvene at the next kind of platform that they need to get to. They have a moment to breathe and reflect upon watching Rodrigo
recharge
implode,
their suits, sort of.
recharge their oxygen and their suits, clean them out before they make their next descent to the very, very bottom. But it's on their way down that they intercept a distress call. And that's because one of the emergency evacuation pods, you're wondering where the other survivors are, they've all jettisoned in these evacuation pods, you would guess. But one of them's been caught in part of the wreckage, and so hasn't been able to surface. So they volunteer to send these two out.
Yeah, the boys head on out. The captain's had a broken... We actually haven't mentioned the captain, again, not explained, has a broken arm when they find him in the very first sequence.
Yeah.
So he's kind of sitting there a little bit immobile because one of his arms is broken in his suit. So they send out the other two blokes.
And there's this kind of strange kind of mucus floating around. They can't quite see the escape pod. You know, they're like, there's a body in there. Is there a body in there? But then they notice something moving in there. You know, again, it's very similar to Alien, where the pokes his head in there to see what's going on, and something jumps at the screen.
Yes.
We hear the gun blast, and it goes to white, and then it cuts, and then they're back inside, and they're laying out an alien on this light table. And they're like, what is it? I don't know. Maybe it's just a baby one. Maybe there's a bigger one out there.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, it even looks like the chestburster alien, you know? It's the same colour, the same kind of shape.
Yeah,
Just has a few extra appendages.
Yeah, it's cool. You never really see those again, because you get other monsters.
You get to see the bigger version.
Yeah, the bigger and the bigger version. Unlike other films I've watched, they don't quite so shoehorn in an appropriate super scientist or super doctor just to be on site to go, oh my god, don't you know what this is? No, we're just all grunts who work at the bottom of an ocean mining rig.
They're just like, oh, it's an alien life form that we've never encountered before. But then again, we're at the bottom of the ocean, so... Yeah, that's par for the course, really.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool. It's a nice interaction. It kind of sets up the first, again, foreshadowing of what's to come. Again,
I mean, it's the creatures do attack them on this next run, because once they hit to the bottom of the ocean and go for that next walk,
yeah, it's a long walk.
You know, you can see like the fish people, the silhouettes of these monsters, like in the periphery of your vision, like they're just there they're in frame, but you don't always immediately notice them. You're just like, what was that? Cut. Couldn't quite see what it was. What was that? Cut. You know, they've got the flashlights and they're moving around in the darkness, and you can see them scampering out of the field of vision. I was like, that was very effective. It's quite creepy. You know, from a kind of looking at it from like a lore perspective, you're just like, why are these creatures just not attacking them?
And it appears they've
why is it jumping at them, scaring them, and disappearing again?
Yeah, and they've clearly wiped out everyone else.
But I'm
because
like, well,
by the end of the film,
but did they? Didn't they? Was
they
the
do.
accident?
No,
Was
they do, because a lot of the life pods have been ejected. I think they mentioned through the film, or foreshadow they have.
Yeah.
And at the end of the film, you find out there
There
aren't that many.
there are only 2 survivors.
Yes, and we know those 2 survivors. And again, spoilers, if you want to find out who they are,
My
watch
best
it now.
guess is that all of the escape pods were launched, but something pulled them all back down.
Which is
this
foreshadowed
one
at the very end of the
didn't
film.
get pulled all the way down.
Yeah, so again, I feel like maybe they're all being face hugged and turned into these monsters. You can draw so many conclusions.
Yeah, it's
That's
not
the
explained for you. I like that though.
Yeah, I do like the kind of ambiguity of what's going on. It's not so mythos horror though. This is very much just deep sea horror.
Well, the next sequence I think works really well is when they get into the next station and they kind of get like on a transport trolley, which kind of takes them most of the distance in this dark, and most of the characters just sat there in silence, just watching the lights go past, contemplating whether they're actually going to get out this time, when of course another obstacle in the way. The compartment that they need to travel through is completely flooded, and they're going to have to submerge themselves and come and swim to the other side.
I'm not nitpicking again, but one of them, that was seawater, so there's a breach. Oh man,
I don't know.
The more I think about this film, it hurts me.
There's definitely a breach, because all of the characters make it to the other side, and TJ turns around and you see something submerge under the water very quickly, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm out of here." Swims to the other side. The other crew are pulling him through using the cable. They manage to get him through, but then he's pulled right back under. Then it looks like his legs pulled off, and then he's pulled through his suit.
Well, they actually because they've got their helmets up at this point. They put his helmet back on because they think he's going to get submerged. So he can breathe. He'll be able to breathe. But then there's just a spray of blood on the helmet as you kind of get.
But you can see his head being contorted as it's pulled down.
And it's so good. And then you get his friend Liam just looks shell shocked because he's like, they pulled him out of his suit.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh damn. And that kind of gives you an idea how powerful the monsters are, because again, these suits are meant to be able to withstand deep sea pressures. So although there is a point in a little bit where you get questioning how tough these suits are, but you're like, oh crap, these things are terrifyingly powerful.
Yeah. It was so sudden and violent as well.
But then now I think on it, this is another nitpick, because there's so many nitpicks with this film. How did they get into there without breaching? Every time one of these compartments is breached at this pressure, they will detonate.
Implode.
And
right.
I'm fine with that. That is, scientifically speaking, quite accurate.
I can only imagine that one of the littler ones, like we had just seen, managed to get in there.
Well, open an airlock. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those moments you're like, what is... I know why they do it. I know... But again, it does leave you kind of going,
how did that structurally work? I'm not an engineer, I don't know how, but as for a horror movie, it's kind of plausible.
Yeah, maybe they got sucked in when one of the breaches happened, and this has got me in a tiz, I'll be honest, because it is a very strange film to kind of have to talk about, because I think I like it overall, but it does have so many of these little nitpicks where I'm just like, oh, that didn't make any sense. Yeah, it's a weird film. I may be overly critical of it. I don't know. I'm just, I'm wrestling with it even now as we record, because I'm just like, it's an interesting film. Makes me think. Yeah. But anyway, so T.J. Miller's character unfortunately died horribly.
Yeah, it was about just after the midpoint of the film, and you feel his absence in the film, his humour, as the race for survival gets confusing when characters get ripped away from each other and they're pulled through the ocean. You don't know whether they're being pulled up, pulled down, pulled sideways.
That is again the issue, isn't it?
But I'm like, it's disorientating, but at the same time I kind of appreciate that, because I don't know which way is up and which way is down right now.
But the disorientating factor, as I said, I think it's a cinematography decision. They almost needed to have a way to shoot those sequences at a distance and let you see, even if they can't see.
I agree, the film does rely quite a lot on close-ups, but I think it's trying to retain that claustrophobic feeling by not showing you the wide shots. Because that might make you feel safer, knowing exactly where you are in relation to the station, to the others, to the creature.
Yeah, but they needed to do it for some of the bigger actions, because I think it's a surrendering of responsibility for your cinematography, because you need to be able to, as a viewer, understand a more complicated sequence especially when there's not necessarily monsters in play, like when this sequence plays out, they essentially get blatted everywhere. The team after this, they go back into the ocean and they get thrown around, trying to run across.
Well, it's Smith who gets dragged underneath
Well, a whole
into
lot-
a cave system.
Well, the tower comes down first.
The tower crashes down,
and Smith
sending
gets-
debris everywhere.
Yes.
Smith gets dragged away into a tunnel by one of the creatures. They go in there and try and pull him out. Then the creature emerges and it carts off Lucian and Nora. And we don't see what happens to Lucian. We just see Nora on her own for a little while. She gets attacked by the creatures. She meets up with Lucian again. They're attached by a cable. And then the creature takes them on this roller coaster again, submerging them incredibly quickly back to the ocean depth. And because they're traveling down at such a high velocity, the suits are not accustomed to dealing with that much pressure incredibly quickly.
Change,
And so, Lucian, you have that sacrificial moment.
They're going up and then he detonates and she goes back down.
I can't tell if they're going up or going down.
That's the problem, actually.
I mean, the pressure would be getting lighter as they go up, not
Well, that's-
heavier. But the pressure change might still be enough to aggravate the suit.
It would be. Yeah.
I don't
Either
know.
way, that's the problem. You're not sure or certain. I think Lucian says something, and I forget, but it's in such a garbled, panicked kind of discussion of two people trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
But he eventually sacrificed himself to save
He
Nora.
cuts himself loose, his suit implodes, and the blast sends her backwards.
He opens his suit, I think.
Okay, yeah.
And then he suicides, essentially, to blast her whichever way. I think
I think it's back up then? Or back down?
It must be down. It must be down, so they must have been going up.
But then the blast would send her quicker.
No, but she was below him.
Was she? Or was
Yeah.
she above him? No.
Either way, she gets blasted where she needs to go, because I think we're not sure, because it wasn't that clear.
No. It was also, you were supposed to have that emotional connection of a character sacrificing themselves for the others, but it was kind of lost. It didn't have the impact I'm hoping it would have.
No, and again...
But it was a great visual.
Yeah, they were both good actors. They did what they could, but you're in suits being flung around in the ocean, and emoting all of that's probably quite difficult to me through a very kind of close-up cams.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
But it was, for me, it just kind of validated the fact that these were not really well fleshed out characters, because I didn't care enough when, the character who's had the most development has just sacrificed himself. It's just like, who do I care about now? Like, how are these three? It's just like, Smith's comatose, she's a coward, and Kristen Stewart's the lead. It's like, well, okay.
And the character's the one who gets the best arc, Kristen Stewart. But actually, we have jumped a little bit, because Kristen Stewart's on her own now. Yeah, she gets to this kind of derelict station.
Yeah.
And it's where her former captain worked. And you get a little bit of backstory about him, which is nice.
I was like, yeah, she finds the memorial card from Lucian's daughter's funeral. I was like, this guy's still getting character development even though he's dead.
Yeah, and she knew about his daughter, but did she not know she was dead? And again, he left this place in a hurry because all his stuff's still in this locker.
Well, according to the director, the Shepherd Station was like, it was supposed to be, it was more fleshed out in the ideas stages that before the Tian company built the entire structure, the Shepherd Station was like the first prototype, kind of scouting for all of the, where to build the mining stuff before they settled it there and then abandoned the Shepherd Station because it was no longer needed. So that, there's lots of ideas and concepts around the film, which is quite interesting, which is just kind of just laid bare, really.
Yeah. And again, the sets are awesome. I like the Shepherd Station. She eventually fixes her suit because I think her suit's damaged at that point. She replaces her suit at that point in the station, and then goes back out.
And she finds Emily and Smith.
Yeah, she's calling out to them on an open radio, and eventually Emily's there dragging Smith along.
Yeah, and she helps drag him all the way to the station as well.
And again, but then they kind of arrive at the drill site, and there's lots of things having a nap around the station.
It's a great little horror moment where you can just see, it looks like tentacles just hanging there. But then as they get closer and the tentacles drape across their screens, you can see that they're like webbed, fleshy hands that actually have claws as well.
Yeah.
And when the light is shined in the right way, you can see that they're actually all bodies, all floating above them. It's a mass of those creatures. And one of the creatures attacks Nora and tries to swallow her whole.
Because her oxygen alarm goes off, yes. That was it.
I was like, that was a fantastic visual. I was like, I wasn't expecting the creature to try to consume her, suit and all. But it's a great moment where she shoots her way out, climbs out of the fleshy mess that's floating away. I was like, that was great. That was a badass moment. But then, then you see the wall of these creatures. You're like, oh, that was just one of them? There's another 100 of them?
And then the wall moves.
But then the reveal that the wall moves, and those were all just extensions of one giant tentacle connected to what would soon be revealed, motherfucking Cthulhu.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool sea.
I love
beastie.
that shot where she fires the flare,
Yeah.
and it just passes right by the face of Cthulhu. I was like, oh man, like that's the best I've ever seen Cthulhu put on screen.
Yeah, it was very cool, and you kind of just see her go. And I liked the kind of slow computation of a human mind, kind of her trying to figure out what the hell do I do now? Because it's just like, is that me hallucinating? Am I running out of air that quickly? And it's just the kind of pause. There's a nice realistic pause where, like a deer in headlights, it's just like,
Right.
and then they run.
Yes, and then it's quickly to the escape pods. They load Smith into the first one, and he's like, no, I'll take the last one, like, you two go. But, they eject him.
Cuddling
the bunny rabbit. Then there's a bit of a scramble as Nora forces Emily into the other one, and she's like, no, what about you? You go. Then it's like everyone's self-sacrificing here. They're like, no, you go.
And,
no,
and
you
Emily,
go.
and again, Emily's character arc is kind of involved because she was
The scared one.
She was scared, and she's a good reason to be scared, I think. But she kind of pulled her supposed boyfriend through this, and the bunny, which is important. So
Yeah.
T.J. Miller shouldn't haunt her. And
It's just nice human qualities that that you would sacrifice yourself for others or do the best you could for others, and
Yeah.
the whole team. There's no asshole in the team. You know,
and that's nice, but it's kind of also a tragedy we never get proper development with them. Again, I liked these actors, I liked the bare bones of their characters.
Yeah.
I just felt you needed a little bit more setup before you threw us in.
Sure, hell yes.
Yeah, and again, at that point in the escape pods, they finally get Emily in there, and I think Nora sort of conceals the fact the third escape pod is balked.
Yeah.
And she's kind of accepting of her fate, kind of fulfilling the captain's duty almost. I think there is a kind of.
But I was like, this is her final moment, is to save these two. And I was like, it would have been interesting if she was selfish to begin with, and just kind of learned, I don't know, to have an appreciation of life at this point.
Not necessarily
but
selfish.
But her very
even,
first thing we see her do is almost sacrifice herself to save two others.
Yeah, and it's almost like you could have played a more written her with more introvert moments.
Yeah.
Where they're all getting along, but she doesn't talk to anyone, which would have made sense to the guy at the very beginning who didn't really know her, and she vaguely knew him because she just does this job as a ghost upon the ship almost.
Yeah.
But you kind of get the captain knows her quite well, and other people who they meet up with all seem to be aware of who she is. So you've ended up with character development off screen, which doesn't give us as the viewer that connection.
No.
So her kind of choice to stay behind at the very end.
I was like, of course she's going to. Like, I wouldn't even question it. Like, the film is illustrated that she would do anything for anybody.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, it's kind of sad, but same time.
Yeah, good person died.
Yeah.
But she goes out with a bang.
Hell yeah. I mean, at first she realises that the escape pods are being chased by the swimming
we can
creatures.
then draw back on what we said earlier with the kind of link to the creatures are playing. I don't know. It's a sport to chase skateboards. I don't know.
I don't know whether they even know what it is. It's just something fast moving, and they're
Contains a tasty snack. I don't
right.
know.
But yeah, the creatures are rising for it, and Nora knows. I mean, there's no escape for her. No one's going to be coming to rescue her anytime soon.
No.
And so, with seeing this giant creature, she decides to overexert the engines or the core,
The nuclear reactor.
and detonate it. And it doesn't take very long. I think it's like 60 seconds.
Yes.
And then we have that that final monologue, similar to the beginning, which didn't really mean anything.
No, it was almost a borderline one-liner. And that's kind of like, I don't like dark places. I'll bring light to them. I was just like, okay.
Sure.
It's got that action movie quality. That was a slightly kind of off-point action movie quote. Not quite cheesy. Not quite.
It's not very memorable, is it?
No.
It's kind of a damp squib, really.
And that's the issue. They're playing on these kind of action tropes where you've just nuked Cthulhu. back to sleep, I guess.
Yeah, like we see Cthulhu in all of his glory trying to escape the blast, but he gets pulled into the suction of the blast.
Yeah.
And we never see him again. It's not like we see chunks of Cthulhu floating around in the ocean.
No.
It's like, I mean, they don't call him Cthulhu.
No.
But I mean, we were mentioning the Easter eggs at the beginning. The company's called the Tian Company, which is a play on words of the Lovecraftian Company. And so it's like, okay, you're alluding to the old ones, the greater gods. You have a kaiju, a giant underwater demigod. But it doesn't have the same effect as what Cthulhu would have on people, and that's, turning you brain to jelly just by gazing upon him. As far as the ending goes, I would say, yes, it is a Cthulhu-looking monster, but it doesn't follow the mythos of Cthulhu, and so it's not really Cthulhu. It just looks like it.
It's playing on the whole idea.
Yeah.
And obviously the real horror is obviously the corporation. But the corporation, and this is the thing, a lot of sequences you're running through these corridors, the corporation's blaring out all this propaganda.
Well, yeah, you see the redacted text information at the end where it's like, yeah, there were 2 survivors. We're not allowing any interviews with them. We've covered up everything. It's just like, strange reports covered it up. Any of the other debris that's down there, it's been covered up. And the company is rebuilding the institute, and we're heading straight back down there. I was like, so for me, it's like part of the Tian Corporation is a bunch of cultists that want to raise Cthulhu, and so they formed an empire to do this.
I know. But either way, it's the classic villain corporation, which is the real bad guy. It was really good. I mean, I thought
so,
that.
So, Jess, your favourite scenes from the film?
I still think probably. There's lots of monster moments, but I do really like the open after the boring monologue bit, where each of the corridors start kind of caving
imploding,
around her, and she's sprinting through the corridors,
sliding in the water.
It's visceral. She portrays the kind of terror of knowing her death is imminent.
It catches her off guard like it does the audience. I mean, she's running around in her pants, barefooted,
having just brushed her teeth.
Right.
Clearly got up, or is going to bed, or getting up from bed. And now the world's coming to a catastrophic end. And as you see just before that sequence, it mentions like it's 250 people-ish on the station. And we end up with, what was it, 7 that finally meet up with the captain, who was clearly in the control room when all of this went down. But I think that sequence, just because this is the problem, there aren't many visually exciting sequences. There's a lot of cool sequences and a lot of tense and atmospheric sequences, like we said in the suits, but I think that was the one which stands out in my mind as
it was sudden, it was exciting,
when she looks up and there's the drip, 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 and then bang, 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 and the whole place is going to hell, and she's trying to wake people up while she's running down the corridor screaming, again showing she's a good guy, which doesn't change, she stays a good guy.
Sure. I had quite a few memorable moments from the film. I think the opening was really well done. Like I said, it was shocking. It takes you off guard. You didn't quite anticipate the disaster occurring so early into the film.
Which is good and bad.
It is good and bad, because in hindsight, I would have liked this film to have been 2 hours instead of an hour and a half, and had, maybe add just another 15 minutes, 10 minutes at the beginning of the film. Of her walking through. It could have just been no dialogue, just a day in the life of, kind of, this is the routine, this is the layout.
The dialogue could have been purely from other characters. She could show her not really being friends with anyone, and seemingly to be an introvert, which would, as we said, would have developed her character.
Given her an arc instead of none.
Proving that she cares about people. Rather than appears to be a selfish introvert.
Yeah, but it was a very, very effective opening. I loved the last transmission from the drill site. I was that was very evocative. Having to resort to just only hearing the last transmission, not actually, having the visuals or spectating it. I was like, that really just helps set the tone. And when you hear, that monstrous moan as well, it's just like, that really alludes to, the surprise that they've got in store for you.
Yeah, I think they do intentionally keep visuals to the minimum. Like, there's one point where the captain calls up a load of screens, and it's all the security cameras to see all the shots. But they don't really utilise it.
No.
Again, it's all setting up, and they didn't I think they steered away from using too much security footage or kind of all that, so it wasn't also ripping totally on other films. And I think they did well on not being totally unoriginal, but I think they are clearly referencing so many other things that these sequences do kind of... That's always a problem. You don't want to get compared to films like Horizon. Because it's awesome.
But I also loved Rodrigo imploding. Like, I felt the tension and the panic as it was happening. Like, the first time you heard that pin sharp sound of the visor cracking, I was just like, oh, this is going to be nasty.
Yeah.
And the film didn't let me down there.
And it sets up the kind of... And as we said, it may have gone in too quickly, but the setup in the corridor and then the setup of his death gives you an environmental understanding of how dangerous their universe is.
Absolutely, yeah. And so when they're doing the walk on the bottom of the ocean at that point, you're constantly hearing that cracking visor.
We did forget to mention where her visor has to be smashed.
Yes.
And that was something that griped us both a little bit.
That was the worst scene in the film for me, was that, we've watched these suits go through all this environmental pressure, and then when she's running out of oxygen and the helmet won't come off, Emily grabs hold of a fire extinguisher and smashes the helmet twice, which causes a crack in the visor, and then she's able to breathe. I was like, if that was possible, there's no way the suit would have survived at the bottom of the ocean. I was like, that was a massive oversight of the scriptwriter here. I was like, I don't know what they were thinking. It's completely world-breaking.
I would have used like one of the guns to blast off the side of that mask, or cut across the front
of it. Or like
it.
take off the glove or part of the suit or something to let air in.
And those suits needed to be nigh indestructible.
Yes.
And T.J. Miller's death would point out to you how dangerous the
creatures are. I could believe a creature doing it because it's a creature.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unexplained.
I was fine with the creature doing it because you're dealing with an unknown monster that's meant to... And it's also meant to defy how strong these suits are meant to be.
Yeah.
But then, as we said, it kind of counters that immediately by just...
having it easily breakable.
A rock gets bounced on the mask.
Because there's a sequence when she's being grabbed by the monster and it's smashing her head into the bottom of the ocean floor. I'm like, why didn't that break it then?
Even though I liked the implosion at the very beginning,
yeah,
that mask didn't have a crack in it. It had been in a room that didn't look particularly damaged.
Yeah.
And the captain's like, better find good ones. I'm like...
How do you know it's the good ones? Why would you not?
Is there no health and safety checks
Why did
on
you
this
have
kit?
to be told?
Yeah. How do you store this stuff? I mean, this is stuff that men and women have to go out into the abyss of the ocean and use to fix stuff on the outside.
Right.
So surely... Is this company... Man, this company sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's great. Again, the villain of the piece is the corporation. But it's not written as that. I mean, if they talked about how their day-to-day life was a bit rubbish and the company was underfunded and cutting corners, that would have kind of just explained away these nitpicks. That's how you have to do it in these films. You need to explain away the nitpicks.
Yeah.
But that's what they failed to do with no development in the 20 minutes, 15 minutes at the beginning to get to know the characters, to get to know the corporate environment. There was nothing. And I think that's the biggest criticism of this film. The setup was missing to explain away our nitpicks. Because a lot of movies where you can go, oh, that doesn't make any sense. It's like corporation. But they explained at the beginning, the corporation are evil. The little bit you saw wasn't really foreshadowing the corporation being diabolical. You could nitpick to the end of the times of this film. That's, I think, its biggest sin. But,
well, Jess, despite all those nitpicks, would you recommend Underwater?
Yes. I mean, it's got a lot of flaws. But I think, in all honesty, it is a very good action horror hybrid. The cast are all solid, and I genuinely liked all of them. A lot. I mean, I honestly wanted more with each of them, and that's probably a good thing and a bad thing, because as we said, they didn't get enough time to breathe, perhaps, in the kind of character roles, enough time to grow and give us each of them have at least some sort of semblance of an arc. But that's good in another way, because leaving us wanting more of these characters means you wrote them well enough for the little you gave me of them.
Sure. Yeah.
So they were a great cast, well directed. The action's great. The CGI on is we didn't really talk about CGI, but the CGI is good enough. Yes, I'd recommend it generally. The end monster looked great. If you like your creature features, this is the best to screen Cthulhu you're going to see of 2020.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to be recommending Underwater as well, despite its shortcomings. The film works well as a tense, claustrophobic thriller and disaster piece that descends into cosmic horror really quite well. I do believe the lack of character development really hurts the horror aspect of this film, as you don't immediately know who these people are, and so you don't really care to an extent what happens to them. And good horror is about extreme empathy. I think the cast did a really good job though, and they were all convincing given the situation that the characters were facing. Vincent Cassell was particularly great as Captain Lucian. The strongest component of the film, I would say, is the cinematography and the highly detailed sets and costumes. It really helped with the immersion, coupled with the great sound design and the limited use of Marco Beltrami's music. The creature design was fascinating, and seeing a multi-million-dollar Cthulhu creature towards the end was incredibly satisfying, and the ending left me wanting more. This film is just pure entertainment. It's very well executed, and it delivers some excellent suspenseful set pieces. It's fast-paced action and tension. It's a great creature feature and a very memorable B-movie that's definitely worth a watch. Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
What did the fish say when it bumped into the brick wall? Damn.